Hello again, everybody. How are you doing today? I am Marie with Aunt Ree's Quilt Shop once again, and we are continuing our sew along today. So last week I had you construct the pieces, and so today we're actually going to put the blocks together. So just to kind of rewind and catch everybody up, if this is the first time that you're watching or you've missed some of the other videos, they're all here. You can go back and watch them. We are making this cover quilt right here from Jenny Doan's 10-inch square pre-cut companion from Missouri Star. I do still have a couple of copies of this in the shop. Guys, it's only $10, and so you actually get the instructions for 20 different blocks. So this is a great value, and we're just going to be making one of the blocks, which is the Prarie Flowers. This is the layout for it. There's a couple of different color options. It is the one that's on the cover. This is what the actual block looks like. So today we're actually going to construct the block and put it together. So last week I told you, I showed you kind of some tips on how to piece these together. So we're kind of calling this the petal pieces. And these are kind of the leaf pieces. You'll kind of see why in a minute. Then also, the first week when we cut our pieces out, you had some squares. And I told you last week, just kind of set those aside. And we would deal with them later. Well, today you're going to also need these. So you're going to need these pieces as well as these larger squares that you cut. So I gave you some instructions on how to press things last week if you want to go back and watch, but I'll go over that really quickly today. I've already sewn the two of the petal pieces to the big square in the middle. So this is going to be our center. Basically, you've got 9 pieces now, and you're going to make a 9 patch is basically what we're doing. So this was super straightforward, so I'm not going to show you how to, because there's not any seams to match up or anything like that. I'm going to give you a tip on how to match up your seams on these other ones. Now, what I tend to do is I lay my block pieces out so that I make sure everything is going the correct direction. So I'm going to lay these 3 pieces out. Now I'm going to take this one and put them together. This is where how you pressed it matters. So I've got, on this leaf piece, I've got the seam going out towards the corner. And on this one here, I've got it going in towards the middle. Now I am able to, because those seams are going to match up, to help you match them up, you're basically we call this locking the seams together. I've got one going one way and I've got one going the other way. You can kind of see here. If you do this right, let me get kind of lined up. Those two will lock together. Basically, they are fitting. You got one, you got another one. They're fitting together because you've got that bulk from the direction that you pressed it. So I want those to, if you feel it with your fingers, you'll get to where you can feel if it actually overlaps. It's going to have extra bulk there. But if it's too far apart, you can actually feel that there's a little dip between there. You don't want to feel either one of those. You want them to, you're going to kind of feel the seam, but you want it as close as possible without overlapping. So if I hold this right here and I open it up, I'm going to be able to see that those match up. So I'm going to get all my pieces. It is almost more important for this to be lined up than your quarters. You want to get them as close as possible, but if you want your points to match, this is one way to get your points to match. I typically don't pin my pieces. You are welcome to. Now that I've got that pinned, I can open it up and I can show you. See, they match up just right. I have done this enough where I get to where I can feel it, and before I put it under the needle, about an inch out, I start making sure, usually a couple of inches out, I make sure because you can adjust it and kind of fudge it just a little bit most of the time. If you're way off, then there's other issues. But before it goes under the needle, I make sure that that feels like it should feel. So I want you to actually feel of it and separate it out, see how it feels. I can feel the dip, overlap it a little bit, and you can tell that that's not right either. So just get the feel of it, and that is going to be more beneficial, in my opinion, than any other technique that I have tried as far as matching your corners, getting those seams to lock in place. Also works if you are doing like a 9 patch, if you press one, or you're matching up squares even, press one row one direction, the other row the opposite direction, and the same thing, those seams will lock in place. And I'll show you that again once we're actually putting these rows together. But right now I'm going to go to the machine and I am going to sew these together and I've got the middle row put together already. So I'm going to do my top and bottom and get it all assembled. Okay, I've got my 3 pieces that are going to go in this row laid out. Make sure that my leaves are pointing the correct direction. They're going out towards the corners of the block. So now I am just going to flip this one over. I'm going to match it all up again. I want to make sure that that seam is lined up. My machine is already set at my 1/4 inch. And I am just going to stitch these together. Again, I'm going to put my finger on this seam so that I know it's staying lined up. Make sure that my bottom corner is lined up. I showed you last time that I do a lot of chain piecing. For this, I'm just going to go ahead and cut it after each one. I want to make sure that I'm all good and lined up. Okay, then I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to do the same thing with the other row. Again, making sure that my corners, because if you put it together like this, you're going to be sad. We want to make sure that our corners are pointing, our leaves are pointing out, and we are ready to go. Get this all lined up. Every time I put a piece on, I make sure everything's lined up and laying the way it's supposed to be, because sometimes things get moved or you just laid something out wrong to begin with, and I don't want to have to rip this out if I don't need to. See how I keep my finger on it until, that way I know that it has not shifted. Okay, I've got my 2 rows put together. I'm going to quickly go press them and then I will be right back. Okay, now I've got all my pieces sewn together. I've got each row pressed. So I once again pressed these in opposite directions. See, this one is going to go this way. So let me get my middle piece. These are going the same way, so I'm going to flip it over. Okay, so I've got, you see the seams on this one are going this way, the seams here are going this way, and then the seams on the bottom are also going the opposite direction. So now it's going to be a whole lot easier to lock my seams together. I'm going to pick up these 2 pieces. Now once again, I'm going to want to lock this seam here. I want to make sure, so on this one, you're going to have several layers of making sure that things are done, are matching up. I'm going to want to match it here at this intersection here. But I'm gonna match it here, match that seam up, again here and on here. So you're actually gonna have 4 places that you are gonna need to match up that seam, which if you have pressed it, like I suggested, it's a whole lot easier. So once again, I'm lining up my corner, my top corner, making sure that this lines up here, those seams are gonna match up. Again, I'm gonna keep my finger on it until it goes through the machine. Now I'm gonna match up the next one. Right here I can feel a little bit of a gap. So I am going to adjust that just a little bit. Again, the fabric stretches, you don't want to pull on it a ton, but sometimes you have to pull just a smidge to get them to line up. So now I'm going to make sure I keep my finger here until it goes through. Okay. Same thing on this one here. This one's matching up a little bit nicer. Just going to run it through. And then I'm going to match up this seam here as well. And it should, if everything has been done correctly and your seam allowances have been right and everything else, then it should be fairly easy to get it to match up. Okay, now I want to show you. So here you can tell my seams matched up. Again here. And it may not be perfect every single time. And again here. This one is off by probably 1/8 of an inch. Honestly, once it's quilted, that's not really going to matter. But this one here is pretty close. So now I'm just going to do the same thing on this other side. Match this one up. And again, you can pin each one of these intersections and pull the pin before you let it go through under the needle. That's totally up to you. I typically don't use pins unless I have to. So here is my completed block and I just need to press it. But once again, you've got this point matched up. You've got all 4 points look really, really good on this one. Okay, so that is going to be your trick for doing this. Okay, so when you're done with the machine, you should have, if you're making the same size that what we're making it, what the book actually calls for, and it gives you instructions if you want to adjust bigger, smaller, whatever, but you should have 20 of these blocks made, and I am just going to very quickly press. Remember, we press, we don't iron. And because you've got seams going different directions, you may need to kind of make sure they stay in the right direction with your fingers. This one here is wanting to flip on me. At this point, it's not as big of an issue, but I typically just press all one direction. Okay. I usually give it a good press from the front, remove any strings. If you remove the strings as you go, then when you get ready to piece it together, the entire top, or when you're getting ready to quilt it, or you send it out to be quilted, I promise you, your quilter will love you if you actually clip all the strings and make sure that it's clean, because if you don't, a lot of times we have to, or at least I do, because I want to make sure that I give you back the best quality quilt. And also I don't want it getting stuck up underneath the quilting stitches. So you want to try to give your quilter a nice clean. So this corner right here is off just a smidge. I'm not even going to worry about it, because honestly, once I get it quilted and it's hung, you're not going to see the difference. Not even going to be able to tell. So this is how far we're going this week. Like I said, if you're doing the size that uses the 1 layer cake, you're going to end up with 20 of these blocks. And then we will continue on next week. So happy sewing. Love you guys. I will see you next week and have a great weekend. Bye.